Then coming to the effect of light duration. Initiation of flower buds in plants is another factor affected by the light period. Plants are grouped according to their response to day length, into which they are called short day plants, long day plants, and day neutral. The short day plants in general develop flowers when the days are less than 13 to 14 hours long. For example, chrysanthemum, xanthium, salvia, and Maryland mammoth tobacco. The long day plants however develop flowers when the day are longer than 13 to 14 hours. For example, hordeum, petunia, clover, radish, lettuce, etc. The day neutral plants are insensitive to the daylight like tomato, tobacco, cotton, rose, carnation, sunflower, etc. Light is subject to cyclic fluctuations in intensity depending upon the altitude, latitude, season, and climatic conditions. One of the most striking effects of light intensity is poor growth of grasses when shaded by trees with dense foliage. The undergrowth of flora may be almost entirely absent in extremely dense forest where trees grow very closer together. Many species of plants are shade tolerant, known as heliophobous plants or sciophytes. They are capable of survive and grow in low light intensity, while others are shade intolerant, that is photophilous plants or heliophytes, which require high light intensity to grow and survive. In certain cases, 50% of the full sunlight is needed. Shade tolerant play a significantly important role in forest plants where their seedlings must become established in very poor light conditions on the floor of the forest. Although shade tolerance is an important factor in determining the establishment of a species in a particular area, availability of soil, water, and essential elements are equally important. Now coming to physiographic factors. Physiographic factors of the habitat include form, behavior, and structure of the Earth's surface, which is made up of erosion of land, silting up of rivers, lakes, accumulation of sand and singel along the sea coast, and also topography and elevation of soil or land from sea level. Strong topographical reliefs such as steep hills and deep valleys has a profound effect on vegetation because it produces characteristic local climates or microclimates. Altitude. Effect of altitude is best visible in the mountains. With the increase of altitude from, that is, height from sea level, the temperature and atmospheric pressure decreases, but wind velocity, relative humidity, and light intensity increases. These changing climatic conditions also bring about change in the pattern of vegetation of the region. Straight from the base of the hills, the vegetation pattern changes from the tropical to temperate, taiga, tundra, and polar, as you can see in this slide. The effect of steepness and sunlight on vegetation. In addition to determining the character of the soil, slope also bring about the variation in soil water content. The steepness of slope determines the rapidity with which water flow away from surface, the degree of wetness of the soil surface, the intensity with which the sun rays can heat the soil surface, and the denseness and the height up to which vegetation can occur. Steepness of the slope also affects the amount of humus and other degrading organic matters in the soil. On very steep slopes, most of the humus is carried away along with the rainwater. You can see in this slide. Then the directions of slope. This factor play an important role in determining the rainfall and hence on the characteristic of the vegetation of the area. The mountain chains steer wind into definite directions, capture moisture from the wind on the certain slides, and condense aqueous vapors in the form of clouds and rains in higher regions. Thus, in certain sites, rich vegetation is found, while the other side of this slide you can see the mountains with lesser height have only xerophytic vegetations. Effect of steepness and sunlight on vegetation. Slope also bring about variation in soil water content. The steepness of slope determines the rapidity with which water flow away from surface, the degree of wetness of the soil surface, the intensity with which the sun rays can heat the soil surface, and the denseness and height up to which vegetation can occur. Steepness of the slope also affects the amount of humus and other degrading organic matter in the soil. On very steep slopes, most of the humus is carried away along with rainwater. Even the direction of slopes matters. It play an important role in determining the rainfall and hence on the characteristics of the vegetation of the area. The mountains steer wind into definite directions, capture moisture from the wind on certain sides, and condense aqueous vapors in the form of clouds and rains in higher regions. Thus, on certain sides, rich vegetation is found, while in other side of the mountain with lesser height have only xerophytic vegetation. Now coming to the biotic factors, under biotic factors that there is a relationship between the vegetation present on a particular area on the earth. They show some mutual relationships. They are dependent on each other symbiotically and asymbiotically. The plants of a community affect morphology, reproduction and other activities of other plants of the same community. These plants of a community show intensive competition for food, light, water, essential minerals and organic matters. This kind of competition is usually called the intraspecific competition. Some groups of plants exist widely in a particular environment and other groups of a plant in another environment, and they influence the environment. For example, a big tree reduces the intensity of a sunlight reaching the underground small plant. However, big tree protects small plant from strong wind and high temperature at the same time. So on the basis of these relationships, there are plants communities are of three types, that is lianas. Lianas are woody plants rooted on ground but climb up with the support of the trees and reach almost on the top of the plant canopy. They are autotrophs and commonly found in the tropical or dense forest. Example is Itaga gigas and Tinospora. And epiphytes grow on other plants that are not attached to the soil. They are also autotrophs and do not obtain food from supporting plants, that is member of the family Orchidaceae like Vandana. Many mosses and ferns and some fungus also in this category. They obtain water and minerals through their absorbing roots from the soil present in the by attaching them to the cracks of the surface of the supporting trees. And orchids absorb water from saturated atmosphere and also absorb rain and dew drops with the help of special hanging roots they have. And these roots have a special water absorbing tissues called velamen that present outside the exodermis. Parasites plants exist on other autotrophic plants called host from where they obtain their food. The parasites have no contact with the soil. They have special sucking roots known as hostoria to obtain food from the host plants. And the parasites may be either total parasitic, obtaining their food requirements or food, water and minerals from the host plants, or partial parasite which draw water and minerals from their host. They grow either on stem or roots of the host plants. Parasitic plants are further of different categories. Total stem parasite, for example, Cuscuta. Partial stem parasites, for example, Cassitha, Loranthus and Viscum. Total root parasites, they are Valonophora, Orobalanchi, Giraffalaceae, etc. And partial root parasites, there is Sanctalum album or Striga, etc. And symbiotic plants are those plants which have a relationship but in that relationship both of them are get benefited. Lichens are the example of perfect symbiotic relationship between two plants in lichens. The algae called phycobionts or blue-green algae and fungus called mycobionts. Algae and fungus live together and mutually provide benefit to each other. And here the alga synthesize organic food and provide same to the fungal partner because they cannot prepare their own food, whereas the fungus in turn provide moisture and mineral elements to the algae. Not only with other plants also make a relationship with the animals also. Animals and plants interact in different ways, such as they have interactions like pollination, dispersal of seeds and fruits. Insectivorous plants is there, then is the myracophily and grazing and browsing processes for the plants. In pollination, bring colored flowers or highly scented or honey producing flowers attract insect for pollination, and formation of seeds and fruits, for example salvia and calotropis. Then is the dispersal of seed and fruits. Animals of all groups are helpful in the dispersal and distribution of seeds and fruits from one place to another place. Some seed fail to germinate unless the same have passed through the gut of birds, for example rheos. And grazing animals greatly help in dispersal of seeds and fruits of many plants. Similarly, insectivorous plants such as Drosera or Dionia urticaria, that is also known as the bladderwort. Nephanthus is a pitcher plant, grow when nitrogen is deficient. They make up the deficiency of the nitrogen by eating the insects. Leaves of these plants are usually modified to capture insects, and they also secrete proteolytic enzymes to digest and the insects. And then is the myrmecophily. This term refers to the association of ant with trees. In this kind of association, both are mutually benefited. The ants get comfortable habitat in the trees, while the trees get protection with the help of ants, that is acacia, lychee, guava, mango, etc. Then is the grazing and bronzing. Grazing by domestic and wild animals is an intense factor which has its effect on the character of the graze plant community, which we commonly call as pasture. Only when the grazing is intense, striking change in the character of the vegetation are brought about by this factor. Intense grazing results in almost disappearance of the vegetation, and the soil is no longer protected from the erosive influence of wind and water. Arid zone is subjected to intense grazing, and they give a desert-like appearances. And rodents like rats, squirrels, rabbits, birds, etc. feed upon the standing crops and cause tremendous loss. In more settled regions of the earth, the biotic factors which have caused greatest impact on the vegetation are those which have resulted from man's manifold activities. Farming is one of the major activities that result in changing vegetation in a definite direction. On well-managed farms, the impact of human activities is most striking, whereas on badly managed farms, human interference are less intense, and therefore on the latter, the vegetation possesses many natural features. Human interested in introducing plants from other parts of the globe pose another problem in the native ones, and competition for existence among them become more intense. Sometimes introduction of new animals by men bring about significant effect on the existing vegetation. For an example, introduction of rabbits into Australia has become a major economic problem for the natives. These rabbits have caused devastation of large area of the country. Modifications of vegetation by intermittent partial destruction by fire is another indirect effect due to the man's activities. When vegetation is burnt, almost the whole of the environment is changed. When fire is extremely severe, the vegetation is almost destroyed. But in one example or exception, you can say exception, Epilobium gustifolium may be quoted over here, that it is an example whose growth and flowering is stimulated by fire, but it is not affected by the fire at all.